believe and have experienced how short-term rentals can change the trajectory of wealth for people. I was not a wealthy person. I wasn't born wealthy. I don't have a big trust fund or anything like that. I've had to carve my own way, and that mechanism has been mostly via short-term rental.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Radical Hospitality Podcast. I'm your host, Zeke Freeman. Today's guest is Tyler Coon, the CEO of founder of Savvy STR Agents, a fast-growing community of real estate professionals specializing in short-term rental investment properties. Since 2019, Tyler is focused on helping investors identify and acquire high-performing short-term rental properties across the United States. They're based out of Asheville, North Carolina. He's built Savvy STR Agents. It's a network that now spans more than 50 markets nationwide, empowering real estate agents to specialize in this rapidly evolving STR investment space. Through data-driven property analysis, market insight, and education, Tyler's helped agents, investors navigate short-term rental regulations and identify emerging markets and build profitable portfolios. Tyler, welcome to the Hospitality Show.
Zeke, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, well, it was a pleasure. I had an honor of getting to meet you a month or two ago now at the North Carolina Managers Conference, and got to learn a little bit about what you guys are doing there. Grab a little happy hour after with you, and I just got off of a call with Ashita, who I know you work well with down there. So you guys have
Yeah.
quite the power team in Asheville.
Yeah. Well, Ashita and I, her husband, are partners in quite a few properties in our Reflections Resort property right outside of Asheville, and hopefully many more to come as well. So love working with Ashita. I think she's absolutely the best. So I'm honored to have the team that I have around me.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I want to hear more about that property because let's kind of start a little bit with just your background, how you got into this whole specialized short-term rental agent space.
Yeah. So in 2019, I became a real estate agent in Asheville, North Carolina. Fast forward to 2020, and me and my husband bought our first primary home in March of 2020. And y'all know what happened immediately after that. And the home that we bought, we couldn't afford. And the reason that we bought it was because the master bedroom, the primary bedroom, had its own suite, its own bathroom. It could be separated off from the rest of the house, a 3-bed, 2-bath brick rancher. But the primary suite was really nice. It had a nice big bathroom that was renovated, nice area for the bed and a couch and kind of like a little kitchenette area. And we were inside city limits of Asheville, and the house also had an indoor pool. So the way that we, could afford that mortgage was via a homestay. We rented out our spare bedroom on Airbnb, and that's how we afforded our first house. And fast forward to, the first time that I ever had over, 6 figures sitting in my bank account was the day that we actually sold that house. And I truly believe and have experienced how short-term rentals can change the trajectory of wealth for people. I was not a wealthy person. I wasn't born wealthy. I don't have a big trust fund or anything like that. I've had to carve my own way. And that mechanism has been mostly via short-term rentals. Up until now, I have almost a $20 million portfolio. Remember, said I just bought my first primary home in 2020. So in the short span of 6 years, I have an over $20 million portfolio at this point, and we've done that all via short-term rentals. So that's how I got into it. We bought our second short-term rental, our first kind of, one single family home in 2020 as well. We put down 10% on that. It was $200,000. So we put 20 grand into that. And through COVID, y'all know what happened in the real estate market. Everything boomed. So we bought that for 220. We sold it for 440 6 months later, with some of the value add, redoing the furniture, launching a great short-term rental on Airbnb, and immediately sold that to another investor and then traded up to a $600,000 property. So very quickly, our portfolio took off, but it was via risking everything that we had, including our own home sanity, right? Like they're just crazy. We had to be quiet at night and make sure that things were comfortable for people. We cleaned that homestay of ours all on our own. So I really believe in short-term rentals as a mechanism for wealth for people that didn't start with it. And I lived that trajectory myself. So that's how I got started in the short-term rental industry.
Man, that's amazing. I mean, it really is one of those unique things today that it has the ability, really like no other real industry, to step in and be an entrepreneur and create that long term wealth. And at the same time, I sit in a lot of these like public meetings, and there's a lot of pushback of, the negativity of short term rentals. And what I love hearing about your story is it really created affordability when you got started. And so it's a mechanism, I think, that if it's done well and managed well, that, it helps people actually have some affordability in their homes and has the ability to build on something. So
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're doing out there in teaching this and helping people grow. Where
Yeah.
where d when did you kinda take that from, "Hey, this is my personal journey," to, "I'm gonna now help other people do this," and what did that look like?
So I started specializing in short term rentals in 2020, like a lot of other people. I became fairly successful, I think. I always tell people, to me, as a real estate agent that helps buyers and sellers, buy and sell short term rentals, for me, it always feels like a little bit of a treasure hunt. I feel a little bit like a pirate, right? I still, these days, 6 years in, I still get a little bit of a rush when I open the MLS and I go and hunt for new properties that might make a good short term rental. So for me, that's what it was always about. It was exciting, running the numbers, trying to find something that could work, and exposing people that maybe haven't been exposed to what sort of wealth you can create through real estate to it for the first time. And so, I became fairly successful here in Asheville. I guess I became known as the Airbnb guy of Asheville, and pretty much online, if you wanted to buy a short-term rental in Asheville, people would recommend me, which, I have always been very, very humbled by, and I do my best to try to continue to earn that trust every day. And, so a couple years of that, and my past clients would come back to me and say, like, "Hey, we're doing really successful in Asheville. We want to diversify. Do you know somebody in Virginia or in Pennsylvania or in Florida?" And so I started expanding my network. And it's at that moment, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've never had a W-2 job. I've always worked for myself. And so it was at that moment that I decided, hey, I don't really know a great short-term rental agent in a lot of these markets. Let's go create them. Let's go teach them. Let's expose other people to this side of creating wealth, from the real estate side. And so we started hiring agents. To fast forward to 2026, today we have over 50 agents in over 25 markets all over the US. The goal is to sell 1,500 short-term rentals this year, $1 billion in real estate sales, which will make us one of the top teams in the country. And I think we're well on our way to doing that.
Yeah. So, what makes a great STR agent? Like, what are the things that an agent knows, that understands short-term rentals, that a typical agent might not?
I think the first thing is that they have a passion for it. So we typically do not look for an experienced real estate agent. I would rather find someone experienced in short-term rentals. It's the
Mm,
more difficult thing to teach, I think. I can teach anybody how to go through inspection periods, who are the best lenders, what are the best loan products, where's the best homeowners insurance. I can teach people that entire process. That's the easy part. Knowing and having a passion for the short-term rental side of things is a whole different thing. Not only that, but they have to fit our culture. We are not here to sell 1,500 bad Airbnbs. We don't want to sell any bad Airbnbs. It's not worth it for us. We stake our claim on the fact that we sell good, profitable properties for our investors. And that's really important to us. So they have to fit our culture, number one. That's the main thing. And they have to have a passion for the short-term rental industry before they even get into the real estate side of it. Now, sometimes they are an existing real estate agent that has a lot of experience in short-term rentals. Sometimes that means we take an experienced owner or property manager and we turn them into the short-term rental real estate agent of their area, like Justin Powell in Gulf Shores. He's a perfect example of somebody that was really, really passionate. He's a good person. He works in medicine, and and manages and owns short-term rentals, has used short-term rentals as a mechanism for wealth for his young small family as well. And when he came to us, he said, "I want to help other people do this." And that's what we care about more than anything else.
mm. I was down in Austin a couple weeks ago at a micro resort event, and I met one of your agents, Nikia
Cavani, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cavaney. Yeah. And I was just blown away. She was telling me about some of the numbers that she was doing in her market. And And we do some real estate, and it's not an easy business. And so I'm very curious about the tools that you're teaching your agents, how you're supporting your agents to be successful. What does that look like that's, making that difference for your agents?
I think the main thing is this is what we do every single day. So there's not one set or suite of tools that we rely on. It's also market dependent. I found like for me, I rely in Asheville really heavily on AirDNA. I think the data is fairly good, long standing. But there was a while after Helene there, after Hurricane Helene happened, that the
Mm.
data kind of went all wacky. And, I reached out to Jamie Lane from AirDNA and I was like, dude, some of this data is like not correct. And, you are at the whim of some of these data providers and it all boils down to algorithms. And so we try to understand the data, but we try not to operate within algorithms because that's where you can really go wrong, I think, in real estate. You have to have good experience. It's about local stories. So what we do at Savvy is we create a lot of case studies. We travel with our clients through the entire process. So, Nikki may have referenced her client and a savvy VVIP client, Jessica Katz, in in St. Augustine, and we followed that story very closely so that we could understand exactly how things were going, understand how it went, and then could it be replicated by other clients without saturating the market. And, so she bought that property. Don't quote me exactly on the numbers. I didn't sell this house, but I think it was somewhere around $1.5 million. She put around 600,000 into it, and then it refied for over $3 million. Emil Sakel from Pricing by Mira, who was handling the revenue management of that property, literally told her, I don't really think you need a revenue manager at this point. Our ADRs right now are double your next comp. He's like, you don't even need me. Just all we do is keep raising the prices every day and your guests keep paying. Like you are in a class of your own in this market that does not have another comparable property to you. And so I think it's following stories like that really closely. We stay involved. We know all the key stakeholders. We're calling them and asking them. And so for me in Asheville, I can give 50 examples of really successful real estate deals, value add deals, turnkey deals all over town in different parts of the city, all at different price points with different features and different investment and design and amenities from very little to a lot. And I have good case studies. And that means a lot more than just the data that you can
Mm.
find online, that because those algorithms tend to smooth everything out. That's what they do, right? They create an average, and for us, we know that we are not here to create average properties anymore. We're here to create that top 5 or 10% property. And if we're going to do that, then we have to actually operate outside of the data. So we know what the data is. We want to operate understanding what the baseline and average is, but our goal is so much more than being at that average or that baseline.
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty smart. The case studies, in a way, I think become almost like test models or a franchise to say, hey, this has worked here. You can apply this over here. And rather than reinventing the wheel, you've got a starting point to say, here's kind of a baseline it should be from. And we've done that a lot in architecture and development, where we've come in with a duplex model. We kind of know we can buy it
Yeah.
at this point and we can sell it on that point. It's very tricky, I think, with short-term rentals to know, okay, am I going to spend $100,000 on a great outdoor, you know, a pickleball court that is that going to add value to the backside? Is it going to, am I throwing money away without having seen somebody else go ahead? When you guys are looking at properties and helping on the buyer side evaluate what to put in, what makes sense, what does that process look like? And how are you helping buyers make those determinations? All right, guys, I've got one quick favor to ask. If you've been enjoying Radical Hospitality, if these conversations have inspired you, encouraged you, or helped you think bigger about what it means to create spaces that truly serve people, would you hit the subscribe button? It's a small thing, but it makes a huge difference for our show and for our team. We're working hard to bring some of the most thoughtful entrepreneurs, builders, and visionaries in hospitality, people creating meaningful spaces all over the world, and your subscription helps us keep getting better every single week. And if you're someone who's dreaming about building a hospitality project of your own, that's what we do at Root Architecture every single day. We help clients design and bring those spaces to life. You can book a discovery call with me or someone on our team at therootteam.com. Thanks so much for being a part of this journey. It really means a lot to me. Subscribe, stay with us, and let's keep building cool stuff that serves people well.
Yeah, I think one, we look at the local market, but I think we also look at the macro market. What have people done in other cities that hasn't been done here yet? So we're always pushing the envelope. And that's one reason that I love Ashita is she is always ready to try to push the envelope with me. So right now, one of our properties that we bought last year, we rented it out before we designed it, which we don't normally do, but this one was already running. It was good timing. And I asked her, I said, no one that I know of, I've not seen this yet. So let me know if you've seen this, Zeke. No one has an indoor laser tag arena in a short-term rental in America. I don't know of one. Maybe it exists. And Ashita's like, I've never even played laser tag. She had never been to a laser tag arena. She had no idea what it looked like, anything like that. And in fact, in Asheville, there is no indoor laser tag anymore. There used to be, but it closed down during COVID. So I had to take her down to Greenville, South Carolina to go actually spend an entire day. We went to 4 laser tag arenas all over Greenville, South Carolina, played laser tag all day. Now she's designing it in our newest short-term rentals. So one, I think it's you cannot go too far in this industry. I think we're moving really heavily into experiential short-term rentals, and I don't see that stopping. Number 2 is look at where the market's at right now. For Asheville right now, what's changing is pools. For a long time, I told people you don't really need a pool in Asheville. And on the flip side of that, it wasn't just because the competition didn't have it, but it was because for the most part, the competition couldn't have it. Pools were about 2 years out on a build. There were no local contractors for pools in the area for the last, 5 years since I've been here. Well, that's changed recently. And now we have a contractor that can put in a pool in about 6 weeks. So the market is shifting. The market is changing, right? We can put pools in fast now. Now we're talking to our clients about, hey, you're probably going to need a pool here. Really, really popular feature. So, but then you look at, what Jessica Katz did in St. Augustine. There were no comps to say that everything she did to that property was going to work, but she just looked at every other market where people go crazy, like Scottsdale, Asheville, Bradenton, and all of these properties, not just dozens, but hundreds of really well-designed, highly amenitized properties doing well. And so what I'm going to look for, honestly, the rest of the year is I want to go find those markets that don't have any of those properties. And that's where we're going to build them after this. We know that it can work anywhere. People want this experience. They want the experiential stays. They want those core memories with their family, their friends, maybe corporate environments, weddings, bachelors, bachelorettes, whatever it is. They want those core memories and they can't get them very many other places. So it's exciting. It still feels like I'm on this short-term rental treasure hunt, maybe just in a different way. But I think that great amenities and great design can work anywhere. I think it's about taking that risk, and from what I've seen, the risk has been well worth the reward. We've seen people not just have 100% plus cash on cash return, but infinity, to the point where we buy a $900,000 property and invest 400 grand into it and it refis for 1.95. We refi out 600K on a cash out refi. So we're into the property for negative dollars, right? We've been paid to have that property at this point, and then it generates 10 grand a month in cash flow. And that's what we've seen some of the success be of these properties. And so one thing I always tell people is that real estate investing is risky. It's not without its risks. Some of these projects take too long. That's something that we run up against all the time with bigger design, bigger amenities, bigger timelines, more contractors. They do take a long time, and that can be tough. But ultimately, we're here investing alongside people. So I would never tell an investor to do something that I'm not doing on 3 projects that we have in process at any given time. And I think that's maybe what sets us apart from some other maybe real estate agents or teams out there.
Yeah, I love the willingness to push the envelope, and the market seems to be absorbing those. What are some of the mistakes that you've seen where people have either pushed it too far or not far enough that didn't work?
I've not seen anybody push it too far yet. That's what I'm waiting for is where's the line, to the other side. Of course, you have to figure out what are the returns possible in your market, right? We know in Asheville for a great property, we can typically push 300K. There's a property we're doing right now that's going to be 10,000 square feet. right across from a wedding venue. It's going to sleep the most people out of any short-term rental in Asheville. We're putting about 600,000 or 700,000 into it. The pool alone is over $200,000, and we're doing that project ourselves. And so we're going to see what that looks like, but there are no comps for it. Right? There's nothing that says that that's going to work. So I'm not seeing anybody push it too far yet. I think what you have to look at is the saturation rate. I think that is important. We keep a really close eye on that in Asheville. I like to look at two data points when it comes to that. The first is properties that launched a year ago. What did they do in their first year? And the second is properties that are launching right now. What are they doing in their first 6 weeks? Are they taking off? Are they getting those bookings? So when you're able to look at, what did you launch a year ago? How did the first year go? Did it go as planned? And then what's launching right now? Are we launching any properties that aren't taking off? Like that would give me some signal, right? Like, hey, this is maybe getting saturated. But I did the math once. And so people tell me this all the time. Like, I think you guys are doing too many projects in Asheville. It's got to be scary, too much going on. I did the math recently for an investor, and I think we've done about 80 projects here. And the average house sleeps 16 people, right? And the average amount of stays a year was about 80. And when I did that math, don't quote me on this, it was around 75,000 guests per year, 75,000 tourists per year, right? The number of short-term rentals, big, crazy, awesome, super properties that we've done in Nashville, times the number of guests, times the number of stays, right? Is how you get that number. Well, Asheville gets about 13 million tourists a year. Right now, at post Helene, inventory for short-term rentals is down 20%. So we've lost 20% of our Airbnb inventory. Tourism is still right there at 13 million. It had a dip last year after, post Helene. We had a tough beginning of the year especially, but things really came back in spring and summer. But things are back now. So we're down in inventory. We've got the same number of tourists. And if you take those numbers, I think with these short-term rentals we're building, we're actually attracting people to the area that couldn't or wouldn't or didn't want to come here before via these amazing properties. We hear it all the time. We came just for the property. So honestly, I don't think we're scratching the surface for tourism for our area with what we've done so far, right? Maybe when we get to 100,000 guests, like, where are we? 0.3% of the number of tourists that come here. So I don't think we're scratching the surface. Hotels build hundreds of rooms a year, right? In all markets across America, they're building to meet demand. And I don't think we're exceeding demand here.
So I kind of talked a little bit about base camp properties versus destination properties where, you're going to build a base camp like next to Zion and you can land there and, and then you can go experience something that's adjacent to it versus destination where you're creating the space to go to. How important do you feel like those two are versus an overlap? Like, do you need, like, can you purely do a destination property anywhere, or does it still need to be a base camp person next to, an interesting downtown, a national park? How much do you think those things work together?
That's probably something I would watch out for, right? You can take like Newry and Bethel, Maine, for instance. A lot of people rushed in to buy there. It got all this big social media buzz a couple years ago. There were short-term rental influencers pushing people to that market like crazy, and it was a newer market. There was no testing period or testing ground there. They were operating off of old data where supply was really constrained and putting too many great properties way too fast and not watching the data and being really careful. There was no one that was being a steward of that market. For me in
Mm.
Asheville, like, I try to be a steward of this market. I try not to put too many of these great short-term rentals in the same neighborhood, on the same side of town. We try to spread things out as we're looking for properties. We think of all the past properties our clients have done and how is this new one going to mix in with all of those. So there was no one that was being a real steward of that area. So I think if those destination properties can do really well and they have done really well. We know so many success stories. But that's an area where you got to be really careful because if you do one and then 10 other people do one, now you're really saturated, right? Now that there is a point where, like, how many people are going to go to the middle of nowhere where there's nothing else to do other than go to this property and not have anything else to do. So for me, it's always an overlap. And that's one reason I like Asheville so much for me. And why we've never personally invested anywhere else is because you have the city, you have the mountains, it's easy access to millions and hundreds of millions of people can get here so easily, both via driving and via our airport here. Infrastructure is going up, number of airlines coming in is going up. So for me, that's why I like Asheville, because you mix those things, right? It is a destination, there's so much to do, and you can attract people with these really, really cool properties. So I think that that's possible pretty much anywhere where you have that kind of base camp. You can do those properties, but the other side of things where you're just making the destination, just be really careful that 100 people can't follow you in and do the same thing. There should be some sort of barrier to entry, right? And for me in Asheville, the barrier to entry is inventory. There's very little good properties that come on the market that would be great. At any given time, I have like 30 or 40 people that want to buy a property here and do what we've done so many times over. It's not that easy. Is one going to come on the market this week? This month? Is one going to come on the market? That might be a good one that we can kind of go do the same thing. So that's our natural barrier to entry here. And so just make sure that you have something that stands in the way of 100 copycats coming in too fast.
What do you think about like where we are in market trends as well? In 2026, with it's not 2022 anymore. You've got higher interest rates still. Do you feel like that is causing a slowdown, or is it really just about finding great properties?
I think it's scaring people away. And I think that that's a good thing. I definitely don't believe that people should be buying as many short-term rentals as they did as 2020, 2021, 2022. I go on both sides of the coin here, right? I got to benefit from this era when you could buy a short-term rental and launch it with a $20,000 budget. And I think in some markets that's still possible, like Indianapolis, St. Louis, Missouri, like there are still markets where that's possible. But nowadays, I think that the big barrier to entry is these big design budgets, big amenity budgets. It's difficult. You have to be more creative. You have to be willing to spend more money. And I think that as an investor, as a barrier to entry, I think that's probably a good thing. It saddens me because how I got into the industry not having to have a lot of cash and then reaping the rewards of the industry maturing very quickly, appreciation. It was good timing, right? And so it saddens me that people won't be able to get in with those budgets anymore. But certainly when people come to me nowadays and they say like, oh, I've got $50,000 saved up and like now I want to buy an Airbnb in Nashville, I tell them do not buy here. This is not the market for you. You cannot afford it. Between down payment and then designing and furnishing, you cannot afford it at 50K anymore in Nashville. And those are the people that'll maybe move to a different market. And so it's nice that I have somewhere for them to go, but it does sadden me, I think, a little bit that it isn't maybe as possible for people to get into anymore in that way.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So it's more of the size of the project, the doing the extreme projects that seems to be moving and working. I look at that. We just did a syndication. Well, maybe you could collaborate 10 of those $50,000 guys to do one big project. I mean, so maybe
Yeah.
there's still some opportunity in those. What do you think is a good budget starting, and I guess a good budget for doing one of these super properties in your market?
Yeah, I think even across the US, to do these, you're $300,000 to $500,000 in, and that is going to keep going up. So, like, that's one reason that I tell people if you can get in, now is a great time to get in. What's happening right now is appraisals are changing. The values of these short-term rentals are changing. Now, people always ask me, like, are they trading on cap rate? No, they're still residential properties, and I really believe in residential properties. I like them. I've not gone far into the hotel or motel game yet. Uh, I've already done well in short-term rentals, and I think I can do well. I think if a great deal came across, I would buy it in a heartbeat today. With that being said, residential properties, Airbnbs are not trading on cap rate. And so historically, it's been very difficult to inject this amount of capital into things like design and amenities because appraisers were not catching up. So what's happening now is, at least in Asheville, this is very market dependent, right? Like where your appraisers are. I know Poconos really, really struggles with this. Asheville, not every appraiser's on board yet. They're starting, right? You're starting to see some movement here where the appraisers will now compare these luxury short-term rentals with luxury real estate around the Asheville market. And luxury real estate trades at a much higher price per square foot, right? sometimes $1,000 a square foot, right? Where there may be a neighborhood next door that's getting $300 a square foot. And it's because it's kind of this like elevated tier. It's this luxury tier. And so that has now pushed appraisals and values higher. Now that we are starting to see that more and more, now appraisers have comps where they can go, I don't need to actually just comp at luxury properties. Now we've got sales, we've got real comps, we've got these short-term rental super properties are now starting to trade. It's few and far between. We only have a couple, but as that starts to happen more and more, that's going to create that foundational comp set for appraisers to really understand why this thing is worth $1 million more than its neighbor, right?
Mm.
Via design, amenities, pickleball courts, pools, saunas, and cold plunges, and entire spas, right? You're building a theme park, maybe sometimes in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And not that I'm a proponent of that. I'm using that more as a euphemism for people to understand kind of, the point here. But I think that things are changing. And so I think there's so much opportunity right now. Like I look at that as a modern day gold rush. We bought 3 properties this year already, $4.5 million in real estate. So like that's me putting my money where my mouth is. And still to this day, like people may look at our big portfolio and think like, oh my God, they're just the money's coming in hand over fist. Like we are still risking every dollar. We're still looking at all of our projects going on right now, going like, oh man, where's that extra 150K gonna come from that's like not evening out on the spreadsheet? Like we don't know where that's gonna come from. Like despite all the success we've had, we're going bigger and bigger and bigger and risking it more and more and more. And I think that that's what you have to do, right? Until you get to a point of cash flow where you could feel really, really, really comfortable and kind of leave your portfolio there, which we're not there yet.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of talk about, how to buy short-term rentals and add the value and get it to cash flow. I think there's very little talk about how to actually sell a short-term rental well. And, with a hotel, you're pushing that net operating income up so that you can sell it on a cap rate. How do you do that in the short-term rental world? Like if I want to maximize my exit, what do I do as a owner of a short-term rental that wants to eventually sell?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you asked, Zeke. I actually wrote a book on this. And in fact, this was not the point of this podcast was to go promote my book or anything like that. I did this last year and it's more of a pamphlet or informational guide than it is a book. But it's titled How to Sell Your Short-Term Rental for More Money. And we pulled in a lot of experts. I wrote the book. But we also pulled in our agents. We pulled in experts from the industry like Jamie Lane and Rachel Gainsborough and all these other people. And and so there's a lot of tips there on how to sell your short-term rental for more money. It is difficult. I think that number one thing you can do is have as wide of an audience as you possibly can. That's the
Mm,
number one thing. It's just like regular residential real estate, right? Just like a primary home. The thing is this is not going and putting your home on Zillow, right? It's about having the buyer pool. So this is why it's so important to work with a real estate agent. And this is, plug for Savvy, right? It's so important to work with a real estate agent that understands short-term rentals because they likely already have a buyer pool for you. Most real estate agents nowadays, like they don't really have a very good name, especially listing agents. They're like, oh, well, you put my property on Zillow. Like, can I do that on my own? For us, like we're very buyer focused. And so when we put a listing online, in fact, a lot of the times we can bring the buyer to that listing. And it's a big part of our value proposition is that we're advertising on all the platforms. We're buying leads directly from AirDNA and Bigger Pockets and Rabu and B&B Calc and all of these other platforms where the buyers exist and where they live. That isn't just Zillow or Realtor.com. So it's a totally different game. Not only that, but a good short-term rental real estate team or agent these days will have access to funds and institutional buyers. Wall Street is here. They are interested. They're hesitant and they're playing a slow game, but they are here. We got calls from family offices last year, all through the end of the year, phone calls that said, hey, we want to buy $20 million in short-term rentals right now. Let's do it this week. Done. Easy. Short-term rental institutional investors, funds saying, we want to buy $250 million of short-term rentals. How do we do it right now? How do we execute on that right now? So there are very few people having that conversation from like the small host angle, and we are. So I think that it's honestly your network, right? And that's one thing that we love so much about the short-term rental industry is this like local connection feeling, this fact that there does not seem to be like the man controlling anything. Like there's a million Airbnb hosts in the US that are all controlling their own destiny. So for me, it's kind of anti-establishment. It's kind of fun. And that's been a big part of it. So I think a lot of it just comes down to your network and who you're working with, and that's how you're going to get the most for your short-term rental.
Are you seeing much in terms of like if I built up a portfolio sale, versus individual property sale? Does having like a brand make a difference in multiple short-term rentals?
I think it did for the one portfolio sale that I know of so far. They definitely were interested in buying into the brand, and they were interested in buying into the flywheel of construction, management, and new acquisition in place. That's the one fund that I do know of that has already traded. So I definitely think there is something to building a brand around it. It's more easily digestible.
Yeah. So I know you just got back from a conference at booking.com event, and you were telling me before the show there's some interesting things happening in the OTA market and different players coming to the table. What's your update from the OTAs?
Yeah. Update from the OTAs is like look at Airbnb and all of their recent announcements. The sentiment that I'm seeing online and what people are talking about is Airbnb doesn't care about me anymore. And I think when you look at it from a stockholder perspective, it makes sense. Airbnb has the largest market share by far. They've got the lion's share. They don't need to advertise or capitulate to the individual host. Individual host has to be on Airbnb. There is no other option. I guess you can try and push direct bookings, you can try and push the other OTAs, but from everything I'm hearing, the majority of everyone's business is still coming from Airbnb, and it doesn't look like that's going to slow down. So what are they doing? They're doing what their shareholders are asking them to. Add new verticals, focus on other areas. If you've already dominated this, now go dominate that, right? It's totally natural. And and so what I'm hearing boots on the ground from my community, from our agents, from our buyers, and from my Facebook group with almost 100,000 Airbnb hosts in it is nobody's doing anything for us right now. Nobody's focusing on us. Expedia bought Verbo however many years ago, right? And for me, at least, and I'd love to hear if anybody's having a different experience with them, they've gone silent. I'm not hearing anything. They're not showing up for hosts. They're not developing their platform. They're not doing a whole lot. Airbnb, you see in their recent announcements, we're launching Airbnb hotels. We're gonna do we're gonna be the better Turo. We're gonna do rental cars now. We're gonna do experiences. We're gonna do attractions. None of those things have anything to do with the individual hosts that are on their platform that generate all of their revenue. Uh, and so I was invited to the Booking.com, a private event that Booking.com puts on every year called Click that they put on for their partners. And for the very first time, they made it an effort to invite some key vacation rental stakeholders. And one thing that I learned, and this is worldwide, right? Booking.com is a major global platform, a major European player. One thing that I learned is that 4 out of 10 nights that are booked on Booking.com go to a home, which I think people would be really surprised to hear. 40% of their business is vacation rentals. And I don't think it's anywhere near that in the US. So what they're telling us is we're already dominating vacation rentals in Europe. We're dominating vacation rentals in Asia with their partner brand, Agoda, Priceline. All those brands are owned by Booking Holdings. And so the vice president for the Americas, Ian, sat down with us at a roundtable and asked us, what is the problem? What can we solve? How can we do this? And we brought up a couple of things. They know the problems that exist with Booking.com today. Guest verification is a huge one and is constantly brought up in all the Facebook forums and things like that. Fintech is another problem that they've got. Payments. Can people get paid? Are the policies there? Why are guests checking in and then they have to follow up for payment later? Why do they get an invoice at the end of the month and they have to pay Booking.com their commission? Why can't Booking.com just take the commission out like everybody else is? and then ease friction, right? How easy is it to actually get on the platform? Even Google Vacation Rentals and most property management systems nowadays, 60 seconds, a click, maybe a quick business verification, phone number, address, whatever it is, and boom, you're listed via your listings that you already have on your property management system. That also doesn't exist very well with booking.com. So they know these problems. But here's what I told them. I said, you're always going to have problems with product. You will always have to improve your product. And you've had some of these issues for 5, 6 years now. Back when I owned my property management company, and I had the same problems that people are talking about today as I had in 2021. So the best thing you can do today is show up and sit at a table like you're doing right now and ask people, what can we do for you? How can we show up for you? Because I think if a major player, OTA, shows up and says, we're here for hosts, we're going to get involved in advocacy, which we asked them to do. We're going to get involved. We're going to fix these problems with our platform. We're going to fix them quick for you. We're going to make it better. And then we're going to stand up and we're going to be there for you. I think if a major OTA did that right now, I think there's a void for that. And I think if someone did that, in a really comprehensive and meaningful and significant way, I think that hosts would rally around that platform. And I don't see hosts rallying for anyone right now. So I think that they're open to it. It's a conversation, but it is a big, massive corporate behemoth of a business, right? And dozens of countries with regulation that they have to deal with all over the place, and trying to make the website user friendly in multiple areas that user friendly means different things, and hundreds of languages. And so I understand, but it's going to be up to them. Do they bring key stakeholders? Do they put the resources? And I think if they do, I think that as hosts, we should be willing to show up if they're willing to come to the table. And I think we should give them a chance.
Yeah. Do you see is there an advantage as a host to be loyal to an OTA versus having a one centralized platform that shoots it out to all? Like, is there an OTA that's, you know, beneficial if I get most of my bookings through this to just say, hey, we'll focus on this type of OTA? And is there a market for that?
Historically, I've always been a big fan of Airbnb. I think the way that they did their platform, it's really modern. I think they pivot really quickly for people when they need to. And it feels to me, though, like in the last 2 years, they've lost that thread. They're still pivoting quickly, but it's like a deer in headlights. Look over here. Look over here. What's the new opportunity? What's the new opportunity? And none of those things have anything to do with us. If they want to go focus on those things, fine, but they should continue to make the headline guests and hosts, I think. So I've always said, and I still believe this, that I think that if you're on Airbnb only, it is highly likely that somebody in their development department, whoever manages the algorithm, somebody's got to be smart enough to say, hey, we should probably boost listings that don't have any calendar connection, right?
Yeah.
That don't have any blocks on their calendar that weren't booked by Airbnb. To me, very simple way to put your competitors out of business, right? If they incentivize the listings that don't get blocked by any other OTAs via their algorithm, just on an automatic level. I've always thought that that is probably what's happening, although Airbnb's never confirmed that. Except we've seen in the last week, Airbnb said, if you prioritize Airbnb during certain months of the year, for instance, if you tell your PMS to only allow July to be booked by Airbnb for this month or that season or whatever it is, and I'm not sure about the mechanics surrounding this. This is brand new news that I've looked at the last 2 days. They will reduce your host fee by 1%. So this is brand new. First time I'm hearing about it. Last couple of days, I've not dug very deep into it, but it confirmed my suspicion that that was already likely a feature in the back end, and now they're kind of bringing it to the forefront. Uh, Another thing that we've just seen released is Verbo sponsored listings, and I've been saying for years that this is coming on Airbnb. Think of every advertising platform out there: Amazon, Google, all of the major players. What do? When you type something and you search something, what's the first thing that comes up?
Yeah, the advertised
Yeah,
branch, whatever it is, right?
a sponsored listing, right?
Sponsored. Yeah.
Yeah, pay-per-click advertising. On
Yeah.
Amazon, you see products. On Google, you see links and products and services, calls, whatever it is. That doesn't exist on Airbnb today. That's going
That's
to be a
right.
multi-billion-dollar revenue stream for them. And I can't believe they haven't done it yet. But you can expect as an Airbnb host, it's absolutely coming. And I wouldn't be surprised that now that Verbo's finally rolled it out after all these years, that you're going to see Airbnb very quickly jump on that train. Because if they're looking for new sources of revenue, why not come get ours? Right. So I think this puts Booking.com, for instance, in a very good position, right? Booking.com has always had major ways as a host for you to promote your property. You can incentivize Booking.com. You can say, hey, why don't you take my fee from 15 to 20% and they'll boost it? You can do genius discounts. You can opt to be in their newsletter and basically pay via different mechanisms to be in their newsletters. So I think though that this could be a good place for booking.com to get in and pull some of that inventory, pull some of those hosts. So I think things are really up in the air right now. Now, can anybody knock Airbnb out of the game? I don't know. I I don't know if it's actually possible, but I think it's interesting that somebody wants to show up to that table.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I really to continue to bring something that actually benefits, host and makes it better. If you were a host right now and you've got a portfolio and you've got that $50,000, it's not quite enough to go buy a new property, but you want to maximize your property. Where would you spend that $50,000? Either across marketing or amenities or wherever.
Yeah. I think for me, it would be outdoor amenities. That's the main thing I see that's driving experiential Airbnb bookers right now. I think it's all in outdoor amenities. There's a lot of other people saying the same thing. So if you do that, please reach out to me. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah. Uh, and if you had the 2 to $300,000, 2 to 500,000, whatever let's say, where would you go and what type of property would you be looking for to buy and invest in 2026?
For me, it's going to be the larger properties. You can still do well with small couples retreats. But I'll tell you, I have a 6,500 square foot home in Asheville and I have a 1,000 square foot home in Bryson City. And the 1,000 square foot home, day in and day out, gives me problems. My brand new AC unit went out. My well that we've put like 3 advanced, super expensive filtration systems on keeps pumping out iron and staining my hot tub. And then the other day, somebody fell out of the hot tub or off the hot tub getting in, and there's a lawsuit now, right? And thankfully, I have to say, there's a a mark on Airbnb's book is they're stepping up, they're handling it. They've basically said, hey, we don't think this should be on you. They're handling it with their insurance, which I think is awesome. But that property has been 10 times the problem that my Asheville property has, and I've made 10 times the money on the Asheville property. So like, if you have to start with small properties just to get going, do it, right? There is a market for that. People love couples retreats. I don't want to say that that property is not making money. I bought that property for like 350 and it makes like 120 grand a year. But with the net that I'm making, maybe 40 or 50,000 a year, like the cash on cash return is great, but my like return on time and return on problems, not great, especially compared to my Asheville place, which I never hear about, never have any problems. It's with a property manager. I never talk to any guests. I've made like 100K net this year on that property after we just had it redesigned last year. And just made so much money on that house in so many different ways. I really believe in the big properties. So if you have that sort of money, go buy something where a lot of people can sleep. People love traveling in big groups, and that's something that's never going to change. Couples could switch out. They could go to hotels, they could go to small short-term rentals, but big groups that travel together are not going to go to hotels. They're not going to move to resorts. They're only going to keep traveling in large Airbnbs because it's the best for them. They save money on food. It's way more economical. Even if you're charging 2 grand a night, but you're sleeping 20 people, you're paying less per person than it would take at a Motel 6 nowadays. So even though those properties are getting 300 or $400,000 a year, they're not just premium luxury properties. Like it's still actually economical to stay in one of those properties. So I believe in it. I really like it, and I think that other people should probably be investing in that too.
Love it. If people want to connect with you, Tyler, what's the best way to do that and to get involved in your community?
Yeah, follow me on Facebook. It's simply my name, Tyler Coon. You can follow me on Instagram at tyler.avl, and that's for Asheville. Follow me, shoot me a DM, shoot me a message. My host community online is Airbnb host tips, dash tips, and tricks. So if you want to jump into the conversation, there's over 100,000 hosts I think we're going to get to this week in that group. It's really well curated. I think it's one of the best groups out there. It's been a lot of fun since I took that over this year, and I think that we've done a lot of good, positive things with it. And I'm just excited for more hosts to be involved.
Love it. I'll include that in the show notes. Tyler, thanks for your time. Thanks for hopping on and sharing some STR wisdom today.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Zeke. Appreciate you.